Hi, this is Privateer Station, and today we bring you day 596 of Russian invasion into Ukraine. As always, with former advisor to the office of the President of Ukraine, Lieutenant Colonel Alexey Arestovych, Nikolay Feldman, and Yuriy Romanenko. Our usual thanks go to our supporters. Thank you, Bill, for your continuous super thanks. Thank you, Clever Pittsburgh, Darren Matthews, and John Afseth. And with this, let's deep dive into day 596. Enjoy. Hello, everybody. This is Project Alpha. My name is Nikolay Feldman. We're starting a war diary with Alexey Arestovych, day 596. Alexey is on direct line with us. Yuriy Romanenko is here in studio. Hello, gentlemen. Good evening, everybody. All right, we're continuing. Our agenda is rather big today, and we're starting with the news from General Secretary of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, who said that several NATO countries will provide aid to Israel. Alexey, which NATO countries do you think he is talking about, and what kind of help it will be? Americans already said that they will have an aircraft carrier and will provide some support functions to Israel. They probably will be getting additional support information. There is probably one more aircraft carrier not too far that may add to this one. And also they have some Marines, one COA, and of course they will be probably exchanging intel and might be providing some munitions depending upon the Israel needs. Israel says that they do not need necessarily an active physical participation in the operations on the ground, but there'll be definitely support from their allies. Of course, Germany, France, Britain, they also expressed their support to Israel, so there is a coalition of countries that are supporting Israel. Right, so it's a big coalition. Not exactly, we shouldn't probably call it coalition. Coalition would be if they actively participated in military operations. Israel will figure it out themselves, how to do that. For example, they have hit airfields in Damascus and Aleppo, destroyed some Iranian cargo, and showed the Iranian Minister of Foreign Affairs that Israel is not exactly supportive of his visit to Syria. So he turned away and went back home. Jens Stoltenberg also said today that any damage to the critically important infrastructure of alliance will require taking certain measures, I guess similar to the event that happened near Finland with the underwater gas pipes. So there are some concerns and conversations about the aggressive NATO actions. Yeah, so we need to say that Finland is a NATO country. So any infrastructure that is being destroyed in or around, this is technically a military aggression. There are 16 different elements of how you can define a military aggression. This one is definitely one of them. I suspect NATO will probably not blow anything up in Russia or shoot at Russia, but they'll probably find economic tools or other means to provide retaliation for that action. I do not believe that NATO has enough guts to attack Russia directly, but they will find a way to send a message. Maybe they will transfer something to Ukraine that will allow us to attack Kremlin a bit better and piss them off. So problem is that NATO cannot really say out loud in the media that we'll give certain things to Ukraine, we'll kick Russian ass for that act of military aggression, because that puts Ukraine above NATO in this case. As an actor, NATO will be asking Ukraine to do some punishment for it. So they will not go for that strategy, at least not in the open. So you still think there will be no physical attack. Why? There is actual harm done to the pipe, to the country belonging to NATO alliance. It's a sort of Bailey's case. Do you think there'll be any serious reaction to it in any capacity? No, I don't expect that to be. Remember when Russia shot down an American drone on camera? It is actually proven, and they've seen who has done it, that it's their jet that actually forced the drone to go down. But in regards to pipe, it'll be a lot of conversations. It'll be who ordered that? Was government ordering it? Maybe it was some volunteers. Is it real Russian action? So it's much more murkier and muddier here than when Russians shot down American or downed American UAV, and yet there was no reaction. At the end, they might even discover that there'll be some private citizens of Russia who blew it up, and there'll be no sanctions against them, or maybe add more. Or if they define that it's government figures, they'll probably add more sanctions to that, but most of them are already sanctioned, so it wouldn't matter. I think their main setting in NATO countries is not to escalate anything with Russia, so I don't know what needs to happen. I don't know if Putin needs to sink one of their nuclear submarines or something for them to consider a direct retaliatory strike. Otherwise, no. United States main diplomat Antony Blinken is going to visit Saudi Arabia, Egypt, UAE, Qatar, Jordan after Israel. So the geography of his visit. First of all, we're talking about very intense diplomatic actions. Do you think this geography of his visit can create some sort of coalition of countries that will be participating in reforming the Middle East, reformatting security system in the Middle East? You know, Nikolai, it's difficult. Right now, even Israel is are not quite sure what will happen. Because all these statements that will destroy all Hamas troops, what will happen in reality on the ground? And many people express concerns if Israel has enough resources and skill to destroy Hamas. And speaking of coalition, that might punish some sponsors who might be able to punish Iran. I'm skeptical about that because in the media you already see that there are some voices coming out saying that Iran wasn't even aware of it. And after these events where you've seen videos with people shot, people stabbed, Israelis being killed and raped, nobody really reacts much. And I am skeptical. You know, in Ukraine, did we have enough? We did not have enough about the same type of aggression. There was Bucha. Bucha, it's not just one thing. There was a torture room in every city that Russians occupied here. There were dozens of Buchas, and the West still is doing nothing. The West is still sleeping. I think they're still in the 30 years of the end of history. And as somebody smart said, if you declare the end of history, then it's no history anymore, it's zoology. So I guess we are dealing here with some zoo. And there is a setting that some good people always think exists and realistic, that political actors will wake up after some tragedy. Did they wake up after tragedy? Did they wake up after Bucha? The impressions were rough, right? But in general, the politics didn't change. And on the other hand, if people did want to reformat Middle East decisively, they don't even need a special reason. They have balls, they have ideas, and they go and do it. So I think all these things are kind of hanging in the air. Israel will probably go into that land operation. They probably last for a couple months. They'll be cleaning up for another 2 months after that. The question after that, where do we send 2 million Palestinians after that? Egypt doesn't want them. Other Arab countries do not want them. Just press them out to see where they run? No, I don't think Israel will afford or can allow themselves such a solution. There are already statements out appearing in the media that it is an overreaction, what they're doing now. So more questions remain if Hezbollah will join, if Iran will actively participate. But I am skeptical about this part. I do not believe in big reformatting of Middle East. This only will happen when this task will be set and acknowledged by active countries who can do that. And for now, we only see additional psyops coming out, like in Russian media, and they start to spill around the world that in Israel they removed all the legal framework for their military when dealing with Hamas? No, all the limitations are there. That would be suicide for Israel to allow their troops to do everything. The morale will go down rather rapidly, so you never do that with military. So Israeli government, in the meantime, is throwing rhetoric about their decisiveness and attacking and cleaning Hamas up, but we're yet to see what can they actually do on the ground. So I'm still skeptical about it. I think Alexei Blinken is probably trying to solve an important matter here, how to let these people out of Gaza, because the fewer people left in that sector, the easier it is for Israeli army to conduct the operations. The lesser victims there'll be and casualties will be during the street fights. And I think he's probably coordinating with Jordan and Egypt any kind of solution related to that humanitarian crisis that already started after the initial strikes. There are indeed a number of casualties in the Gaza sector. We remember looking at Mariupol, remember when Russians were destroying that city? We had citizens of Mariupol who said that about a third of Mariupol citizens were killed as a result of bombings. This is not fully processed by international community, that real victims in Mariupol can be on the level of 100, 150,000 people. And it's not just several butchers, it's several dozens of butchers. And over in Gaza, there are 2 million people. So to resolve this problem of preventing this humanitarian catastrophe is probably a key matter for all these countries. One needs to understand that there are also hostages, including American citizens, held hostage by Hamas and other countries and other NATO countries. So this matter also needs to be resolved. They need to have some negotiations and some action in this regard. Americans already declared their readiness to solve it with force, but Blinken, as the main coordinator, is there probably regulating and trying to resolve these matters. But there is no solidified framework answer from all these countries, and I think right now they are figuring out how to address this crisis. It also appears that all these countries will be forming their policies as the events unfold. We're looking at Egypt. Egypt says they're not ready to take refugees from Gaza. Officially, they're saying that there is one transfer point between Egypt and the Gaza sector, but in reality, it's not working. So they're not letting citizens of Gaza to Palestinians to come to Egypt. Well, first, I think one needs to resolve the matter of who will give money, because it's millions of dollars to settle these people, these refugees. Yeah, that's a significant problem. These Palestinians are not needed, are not demanded by any of their neighbors who usually scream that they're so pro-Palestine, but when the crisis hits, they close all borders and they don't let them in, neither Jordan nor Egypt. And this is a significant issue. And by the way, this is a very drastic difference there versus what was happening here when Russia attacked Ukraine, when millions of Ukrainian refugees went to Europe. Europe dedicated resources and were welcoming our people with open hearts. So that also one of the things to consider when people are saying that Arabic people are one and they're all supporting each other. Not really. That's how it looks like. When the tragedy hits, nobody really does anything. Yeah, tragedy of Palestinians is that there are 19 different Arabic states in the area, but none of them wants them. None of them wants to take them as refugees. In the meantime, in Germany, Chancellor Olaf Scholz said that there's no possibility to prohibit Hamas as an organization in Germany. There is no official headquarters of this organization in the country, but however, they can forbid all gatherings in support of Hamas or can forbid fundraising for Hamas. European Union and United States already classify Hamas as a terrorist organization. And they're also saying that Germany is forbidding relations with another group that is supporting inmates in Palestine and Israel, Palestinian inmates, I understand, and still are calling upon destruction of Israel. And in Germany, they decided to forbid this group as well, our relations with it. People coming out, also officials saying that, urging their citizens to be more vigilant and be careful because they're likely going to be terrorist acts against Israelis. There are a lot of protests in Europe. There are protests in support of Hamas in France, and French police is rather brutally dispelling them. And the technology that was used, actually imported from Soviet Union into the Arabic countries, they always had two wings in political organizations. They had a political wing and a military wing. Military wing was doing terror, and political was not involved in terror. They were formal, they wore ties, and they were presentable and participated in negotiations. And there was some division between them, so there was some distance. But right now, Europe is starting to see political wing of these organizations as part of that terrorist organization. And before that, they were accepted rather officially in Europe, in Moscow. In many organizations, Hamas had representation, and they had a way into the global politics. They were basically positioning themselves that those guys, military guys, are a bit separate, the ones who are cutting throats of Israelis and their children, but we are just politicians and we can help to resolve the matter. So now it seems like Europe is slowly awakening to that. And despite different attacks on Israel and their reaction to Palestinian behavior and promises to punish certain military actions of Israeli government, but regardless of that, Europe is still awakening to the fact that political wing of these organizations needs to be marginalized, and they understand that Hamas political wing is just as bad as military wing. And when Germany and France already declaring that opinion, the smaller countries of European Union cannot avoid that, so they'll have to align themselves with these things. Plus, there were actions with solidarity of showing Israeli flag or depicting it over different buildings in Europe. So Europe was rather active supporting Israel at the beginning. But there are other examples too. Pink Floyd leader came out with a Gaza, with a Palestine flag in support of Palestinian people. So this is an ongoing process, but I think ultimately Europe will try to get rid of Hamas and basically set an example for other organizations as such, that they will be destroyed, same as ISIS and Al-Qaeda and the rest. So you think this course to marginalize Hamas, can this stop Hezbollah that already promised if Israel will start ground operation and invasion in Gaza, they'll start their actions in the north? No, Nikolai, I don't think that's what stops Hezbollah. This is a pro-Iranian militant group managed by Iran, and they're always solving tasks for Iran. There were already attempts. They tried to cross the border. They tried to attack Israel, and Israel is attacking them back and preventing them from crossing the border. But they're not shooting missiles at Israel, because that would actually give enough grief for Israelis. They have some missiles that can fly down to their nuclear center, which is 2/3 down south from the border in the north. And there are some missiles that Hezbollah has that have about 300 kilos payload. If that explodes, that can destroy a lot of things. But Hezbollah is also trying to preclude unnecessary losses because they're not in the best shape after their war in Syria. They still are not at their top shape. If they start wasting resources and personnel in this military action against Israel, they don't want that because they'll start losing positions in Syria as well. So even Lebanese army, which is rather weak, let's say, and Hezbollah is on par with them in their force, even Lebanese army already disarmed some of the military assets of Hezbollah that they use to attack Israel, because they understand that if Hezbollah will start military action on the border with Israel, it will be Lebanon government who will be, and people who will suffer because they already are in deep trouble with their transitionary government, with lack of electrical supply to their cities. So they understand the risks and they're trying to de-escalate and to prevent Hezbollah from attacking Israel. Yeah, there were some notions that in Gaza as well, they have issues with electricity and fuel. Nikolai, we need to clarify that point. Some people are saying that there was some supplies going to Gaza with water and fuel, and evil Israel cut those supplies off. No, this is not so. These were supplies given to Gaza by Israel. So they stopped their own donations to Gaza into the area of military action that is going there. Because, by the way, even according to international convention, Israel is only responsible for the territories which they occupy. But according to international law, the territories that they have not occupied, they're not responsible for supporting the infrastructure of those territories. And these territories in Gaza, they're actually very well fortified by Hamas. They have a lot of military production there. They have tunnels and other things. So Israel technically is not responsible for providing all these resources to Gaza. So an example would be, imagine we would be trading with somebody and selling them, I don't know, socks and laundry detergents, and then the members of that person's family came and killed some of our family members. Do we have a right to stop trading with him? Right? Of water and even if it's water and food, right? It's our right. So when Israel eventually occupies Gaza, and they probably will, then they will be responsible for providing food and water and energy and everything. And according to military and international laws, they will be providing all the resources to civilians. Thing is that international society knows very little about these rules, and there are a lot of statements in media to Israel, why you tyrannizing all the local people. So Israeli water was, by the way, only about 20% of water consumed by Gaza. 80% were desalinated by Hamas and were selling that water to population. So Israel was only giving them 20%, and these screams about total water shutdown, this is not exactly true. Israel is, I told them too, that it's a very delicate question and they need to think about it. In any case, though, it's obvious that there will be, and already are, serious problems in that area due to military action, and these are direct consequences of the tragedy that occurred because of Hamas attack on Israel. And that's according to the proverb, when you cut the trees, there are splinters in the air. One needs to also understand what Gaza is from the military viewpoint. It's a lot of command points. They have a lot of tunnels where they fabricate their primitive missiles, and they fortified it. They made a lot of fortresses. In order to destroy these assets, Israelis need to drop serious air bombs on that. They need to go through sometimes 5 meters, 5 yards of concrete before they can reach the target. And Israelis are still picking fire, picking their targets. They're attacking explicitly defined military objects, and they already announced for the women, children, and peaceful citizens to retreat, to remove from Gaza sector and from the city agglomerations. I would be sending this message daily and finding ways to make sure these people move. But one needs to understand that Israelis are very hot on emotion now after losing so many of their own due to this senseless attack by Hamas. But overall, yes, it is. It has a potential of becoming a big tragedy with 2 million civilians. But one still need to understand that Israeli troops have to destroy military fortifications where otherwise they will lose hundreds of people. Because when they go and send their ground troops to Gaza, this is going to be a very difficult fight with explosives, with traps. They're trying to prevent more casualties of their soldiers. Their target is not to cause harm and suffering to civilians. They're basically preparing a battlefield so that their troops will have a little easier way to achieve their goals. And given the infrastructure and how much Hamas was digging there and how much concrete was poured, they need to continue working on doing that to destroy it before they invade. before they go in. Commander of the Ukrainian Intel, Kirill Budanov, indeed came out today and said that we are aware that some of the trophies that Russian troops captured in Ukraine from Ukrainians, they were transferring those to Hamas. They don't know if Hezbollah also got that, but there are some videos and some proof that Russia was transferring some of the arms to Hamas. And you can also see a very non-characteristic motions, what terrorists have used, for example, FPV drone against Israeli tanks. This is definite signature of the Ukrainian war. This has not been used in the Middle East previously. Kirill Budanov also outlined two interesting facts. First of all, a little more than a week before Hamas attack on Israel, from Lebanon, there was launched a Russian radio station, Sputnik, in Arabic, in a very propagandist style with Russian pro-Putin's narratives. The second is on the 24th of September, Russian space satellite was moved to geostationary orbit over Israel. This is the equipment that can provide additional intel. And in the period between 24th and 28th of September, a Russian delegation visited Iran, and we know that there were several requests on the Iranian side to Russia to increase the intelligence support in that area, and now we understand what is the Russian action in this area in support of Iran and their allies. So, yeah, see, before it was just rhetoric in the air about the axis of evil. Now this axis actually has formed. It's Tehran, it's Pyongyang, it's Moscow, it's Damascus, and somewhere behind them there is also Beijing. These countries plan things together, they exchange technology, they exchange arms. It is a collective challenge, and the Western civilization and the rest have to respond collectively to that challenge. This is turning out to be a real axis of evil. Iran is helping Russia to fight with Ukraine. Russia is helping Iran to fight with Israel. And even if Russia would not want to go there, Iran has enough levers to pull in order to make sure that Russia does support them. And Korea, in the meantime, is sending ammo. They're also transferring some technology to each other. Korean missile development, of course, probably has fingerprints of both Russia and Iran programs. And we understand that information PSYOP is going against Ukraine. From the beginning of this conflict, from the beginning of the invasion of Hamas into Israel, Russia started dumping a lot of fake news into the media, saying that these are weapons used by Hamas that were sold by Ukrainian military. Complete PSYOP, no proof for that. And in military doctrines of Russia and military doctrines of NATO, all these PSYOP are activities classified at the highest level of military operations. People get new ranks and medals. People in rank are actually conducting these operations. This is actually, in the world of operations, is the upper contour of warfare. In the pyramid of war, material destruction of enemy, and my respect to those on our front who are destroying our enemies, this is the lower still step of this pyramid. PSYOP, cognitive warfare, is on the highest level of it. There is another thing that before Maidan, remember, Russia changed the orbits of some of their satellites to monitor the territory of Ukraine. I think Yanukovych didn't even know that he will not sign the agreement with the European Union. We didn't know. But satellite constellation was already relocated to monitor Ukraine by Russia. So in the same manner, they're now reconfiguring their satellite group to provide support to Iran and to provide more intelligence of that region. President Zelenskyy made a statement, suggested an initiative that he would like to visit Israel to express his solidarity with Israeli people, and he sent a request to Israel. In this regard, do you think, Alexey, this is a timely suggestion and if it has the right symbolic weight. Do you think it's the right step? I think it's a very strong gesture. It's a good way to gain political capital between both countries and fix a few misunderstandings that we had with Israel from wrong voting in the United Nations. Remember those early on? And I think personally for President Zelenskyy, he can correct a few elements that have surfaced in the media because of his administration actions. And for Israel, it's a way to turn the page. And it's a good reason having Iran and Russia acting against Israel and Ukraine. It's a good reason for our countries to get closer. Ex-ambassador of Israel in Moscow is actually openly saying about direct aid of Moscow and direct trace of Moscow in this Hamas attack. And a lot of professionals, a lot of journalists, military specialists are highlighting and showing that indeed Russia and Iran are cooperating against Israel. So it's a good time for us to create a stronger connection between our countries, and I'm the first one to support it. Russian army has shelled Donetsk region cities. One child died, several citizens got wounded. Avdiivka was shelled also in the last few days. 58-year-old male was wounded, 61-year-old woman is also in hospital. The village of Bogatyr in Volnovakha was also attacked by Russia. 11-year-old boy died and his brother was wounded. So let's going back to our front. It seems that Russia is attacking Avdiivka now, and it follows in the same logic as they usually do. They discard all the casualties of civilians that may happen, all the collateral damage that they can cause. Right, Nikolai, they have a system of war and they're never interested. That system doesn't take into account any collateral damage. They don't care. Regardless if that's a birthing place, a hospital, or we've seen all that, right? On the military side of events, they actually decided to make another Bakhmut out of Avdiivka. Losing in Bakhmut, they decided to create a new event down south. They moved some troops to Avdiivka. They dropped a few more detachments, and basically they returned the ones that we have destroyed, grinded down to inoperability. They refit them and brought them back to Avdiivka. So you can see they're attacking on both sides. They're attacking from the north and from the south. And they're trying to make two pincers, big pincer, small pincer, very similar strategy they keep using over and over again. And this is unprecedented in that area, the level of attack that they're conducting right now. But there are interesting specialties here, peculiarities. The first few positions that they managed to occupy, they actually lost so many people that they had to withdraw those detachments completely because they lost their battle worthiness. Over half of their personnel died fulfilling Russian tasks. So, and one needs to remember that Avdiivka is a very well fortified region. Our military personnel is successfully defending that position. There is a threat, however, that if Russia continues, they might cause more destruction and give us some concern here. They're using artillery and aviation actively. And the town is being shelled very actively. As the head of military administration in that area said, that military are being hit 100 times a day, and the town is being hit 10 times a day, tens of times. And those who've been in Avdiivka, this is a small town. So every explosion, every bomb definitely causes a lot of damage for the infrastructure and to the remaining civilians, whoever is still there and who hasn't left it. As for military, we understand that, yeah, they're continuing the fight on their battle stations. This is an attempt by Russia to gain some propagandist success on the front when they're failing on other parts. In Svatov and Kremenaya, they're also adding more troops, trying to push towards Kupiansk and in direction of Borovaya. You can see some arrows here. There is definitely a skirmish down in Silver Forestry, Sibyanskaya Forestry downstairs. And in Kupiansk, you can see several arrows coming from the east and from the north. But the problem there is terrain. They're definitely, it is a serious action here, but they're failing to create the action that they wanted initially. They wanted to create a big wave and quickly take back the parts of the occupied territory. So, unfortunately for them, they are failing to do that. But as a general, this is an effort by Russia to prepare their positions for the winter period, because the political task of capture Donetsk and Lugansk regions is still there. They are not canceling this task, and they probably will never do. As for the south, in the direction of Priyutne, it's a little more to the east. Yes, please move it there. Заветное желание, the sacred wish, that's where a lot of fighting going on. Some actions are successful for the Ukrainian troops, other actions are successful for Russian troops. The fact remains that they slowed down our motion down south. Just a few weeks ago, we saw that direction as a very perspective, even before Tokmak, but now they brought more troops there, so effectively they halted our motion down south. Near Tokmak, we are continuing to push down, but they actively attack us as well. They try to counterattack, and certain elements of certain parts of the front line are being captured continuously by one side and the other side, and they can change hands several times a day. So both parties are rather worn out on this part of the front. Russians brought some of the detachments, however, the ones that we completely destroyed before, they refitted them with new personnel and they brought them back and fight. Once again, this is not strategic reserves that they are creating and strategic reserves that they are throwing here. They essentially withdrew some of their troops after those being beaten severely, and they refitted them with new personnel and brought them back in. But it's continuous counterattacks. They're wasting a lot of personnel. It's basically a meat grinder there. The only thing it achieves, it slows down our motion down south and makes us expand more reserves trying to go south. But on the humanitarian aspect, they're wasting too many troops. It's going to bite them back, but they're trying to copy our strategy. Remember how we attacked them here and there in different parts of the front on the south? Now they're trying to do the same, but on the bigger scale. They're doing that in the north, they're doing that in the east, and they're doing that in the south. Alexey, is it correct to understand that Russians have accumulated some reserves that they're throwing into that attack? No, they have not accumulated. They have refit the existing detachments. They just brought more people. For example, they had some paratroopers and infantrymen who were fighting in the same directions, same numbers of detachments. We destroyed those detachments. They lost over 50% of their personnel. They brought more people, some equipment, and they brought these detachments back to front. It's not them adding new battalions. So there was no, for example, non-existing, let's say, an example, a 50th Brigade, and they brought a 51st as well to support it. No, they basically almost lost their 50th. They refitted a little and brought it back. And it's not even operative level reserves. It's just operative tactical motion. But they have accumulated some shells on that direction, and the aviation is rather active there, dropping serious air bombs, gliding bombs on our heads. So this is a phase. This is not going to change the flow of military action dramatically, but it does force us to slow down, to sit down and defend for a while, till we grind them back again. And it slows down our motion in the southern part of the front, and also for some reason, while we are trying to liberate Bakhmut area, we're gonna slow down there as well, which I completely not support, and I know why we're doing it, and for that I support it even less. But once again, these are not new troops, these are not new detachments that they're adding to their fighting group. It is the old ones that they refit. If they brought additional troops, that would mean more grief for us. That would be severe issues for our troops. We might actually have to withdraw from some territories. So for now, what's happening? They basically, they retreat. refit, bring them back to the front. That's what they're doing. Strategic reserves would be bringing more detachments instead of refitting the old. The Institute of Study of War published, Alexey, some of their ideas about what's happening in Avdiivka. They think that local tactical offensive operation of Russian troops near Avdiivka is demonstrating that Russians can understand and learn from their actions in Ukraine. They started and figure out some lessons. So they started properly. They prepared their attack fields with artillery first, and that was observed by satellite imagery. And it did show that a bit to the south and a bit to the north, Russian troops managed to move on the tactical level for a couple hundred yards, but they're outlining that unlikely these motions will lead Russia to strategic or even significant tactical advantage in that area. And they have failed to encircle Avdiivka so far, but will likely continue this action. Well, in orderly fashion, Nikolai. In almost 18 months, you can teach a hare to smoke, not only Russian troops to fight. So it's also the logic of war. Infantry, of course, they are dying, but commanders, the dumb ones, also die. And the ones who know how to do some things, who are quick learners, they find ways to do that. So that's one. And I'll give you an automobile example. For example, they were attacking us with 10 tanks. Let's say the fact that they got some reserves doesn't mean that they brought 5 more tanks. It means that we destroyed 7 out of those tanks. They repaired 6 of them and brought them back to fight. And that's what's generally happening. Plus, they're also moving a few tanks from other parts of the front and additional work of aviation and artillery. That's how they create some advantage on this area. And they captured some of the forward positions of Ukrainian military, the level of platoon and company. And they've lost so much doing that with that tempo, they cannot take Avdiivka. They probably will lose what they've tried to capture. So this is local success, but this is to give it in the right perspective. For example, bring soccer example. We managed to bring the ball to the side of the opponent, but 5 of our players were taken away on stretchers and 4 of them got the red cards. So you can say, yeah, tactically the ball is on that part of the field, but it's not a good development for us. And we're trying to explain it to civilians who are not experts in these, but on the military side, yeah, Russians are paying a huge price for their motions. And their psyops, of course, are spinning in, pro-Putin media is spinning in that Russian troops are generally successful and starting new campaign. No, in general, they're not. They're starting to be a little better because they're learning, but again, the prices they pay, and we cannot say that they created an existential threat to that territory, even on the operative level. The territory of the size of 20 by 30 kilometers, even that is a little too big for that area. It's not so. But they're preparing for winter campaign. They're preparing their reserves. They'll try to continue capturing Lugansk and Donetsk regions and try to straighten the front line in the south. But in order for that to change, really, they need to get more equipment, or we have to change something drastically. Our side then would need to have some more technical solutions. So unless there is a black swan event on the front that will change things on the front, it will be a rather long and tedious story. It'll be a dumb war in this sense, from the military viewpoint. But given the Russian long will to fight the war of attrition and our problem that we cannot stop fighting, because then it'll be a big bucha all over our country with our citizens. So we're probably looking at the situation similar to the First World War, with a lot of lunar landscapes and thousands of people being wasted to try to capture a trench or one position without major movement. So something needs to happen. I don't know if Russia gets a shit ton of supplies from Korea or somewhere, or if we get new supplies from our allies. Until that happens, not much will change. What needs also to happen is our capability to reach remote positions of Russian military that provide energy, that provide air support, that provide manufacturing capabilities. Russia still has advantage in this regard. We don't have means to attack them on 2,500 kilometers depth, but we're slowly getting there. And we're getting, at least on the smaller distances, we're also using UAVs now. We're trying to increase our capability to retaliate with UAVs flying further. Our air defense systems are slowly growing. But again, as we're looking into this oncoming winter, it may be harder than the one before because our energy infrastructure didn't get too much better. We repaired some, but a lot of it was damaged. And what will change is if any of the sides manages to get more personnel. We need to find more troops, right? And more equipment. Russia actually is okay on the personnel side. They're paying enough money to attract enough of the lower levels of society to go for that chance to try to fight in Ukraine and maybe change their financial situation for the better. But on the technical side, it's real bad for them because we're grinding down their technical capability much faster than they can refit. Now, as for us, if we take out another 300,000 people from our economy, that will cause significant issues for our economy. Also, on the equipment side, we have issues. Our military-industrial complex is not producing enough to refit one brigade and in a month. So that's not enough. One brigade level would be enough for us to hold defensive positions. In reality, we would need probably 3 times that. So until our allies transfer that amount of aid for us to boost our capability, nothing will change here. Europe is also slow in producing the equipment, so they're in general just getting there to the capacities that they want to have. United States could be the country that actually would transfer things in bulk to us to change the situation rapidly, but they're not doing it for political reasons. So there are likely going to be a lot of news from the front coming and saying that Russian troops got enough effort and resources to go and capture 2 groves on the southern front. And Ukrainian troops, after significant effort, managed to take them back. And that's the kind of news we'll be seeing on the front for a while, I think. So for us, the way out, the way to win, would be to cooperate with our neighbors at any cost to be able to get a lot of volume, shells and new equipment. And we need to continue working with United States and other allies, perhaps South Korea, who can quickly deliver a significant amount of resources. And the war on that level is not about numbers, it's about rhythms. Right now, it's better to have 10 tanks than a few weeks later 100 tanks. Of course, the best would be to have both 10 and 100, but you have to keep pumping resources into this war in order to change it. And we're still fighting as if there is no existential threat and we have won. This is not so, to say the least. And one more thing. Yes, Yuri, you can come in. In this context, the fact that Switchblade 600s of them, right, is going to come to the front, do you think it will affect the situation? It is basically an analog of Russian Lancet, just an American that flies for 90 kilometers, has a Javelin-type warhead. Yeah, this is better than Lancet, definitely. And one needs to understand that there are only 3 major principles in the military. And an example from my biography, when I was a young lieutenant and I brought some really good intel to my superior, but the first thing that I heard from him was bad, not enough, too little. And these are the main criteria in the army. Bad, too little, not enough. These are the main criteria. So if they transferred these 4 months ago to us, we probably could have destroyed some more artillery faster in the south and could have been in Tokmak already. But I also want to say that there are very few weapons that can be a true game changer in the war. HIMARS were such a game changer. F-16s, when they get to Ukraine in the quantities of several dozens, they will be able to change situations significantly. Not to win the war, but at least to change the front again. So several hundreds of Switchblades, they will definitely be useful, but they cannot break that situation. They cannot change it drastically. The only thing that will change that situation is a huge number of artillery systems and more infantry on the front. And until, the old story, robots cannot win the war. The nature of war is making sure that your enemy bends under your will. Robots do not have their will. Robots only aid humans. So until the balls of Ukrainian infantrymen are hanging above the Ukrainian territory that was occupied by Russians, we are not going to win this war. So we are preparing people. We still do not have enough, and we do not have enough equipment. We don't even need 30 Leopards. We need, if some people compare, what about 30 Abrams or 30 Leos? I would go for 300 of old Soviet tanks instead, because it's more important to have tempo immediately than, very high precision and not enough quantity. Of course, I would want to have both, but yeah, realities. And our allies are just starting to revive their military industries. Americans keep yelling at Europeans that, guys, you need to restart your military production. Make sure you do spend 2% that you promised to spend on NATO. While in Europe, in the meantime, they're saying, well, it's so difficult, right? We don't have enough money, resources. We're trying our best. But take Slovakia. They are a key weapons hub in Europe. They're producing a lot of munitions. And right now they are in superposition with Ukraine. They are actually pissed at us for our politics, and they don't want to transfer enough supplies to our front until we resolve it. And Americans are not supplying us in big quantities of weapons, so situation is difficult. Now the question is, what are we doing? Do we have extraordinary measures that would be able to change political situation and to increase our production drastically? I cannot say that we do. I do not see that. Yeah, we do hold our pants high enough so they don't fall completely, but I do not see a government level, federal level program that would change the situation for the better. I don't know if it's we don't know how, we don't can how, probably a mix of everything. And gentlemen, it's been over 50 minutes of this stream. There are a few more news, but let's move it to Saturday, probably to our next stream. Alexey, thank you again. Yuri, thank you as well. All those who've been with us, thank you guys for your time and your attention. Please do not forget to click the like button. We did not ask you, but it does help us to bring the light of truth that we try to. Tomorrow we'll have more streams with Sergei Datsyuk, comparing the war of Israel and the war in Ukraine. And with this, let's conclude. See you.